I've decided I'm a prettier version than our chairman, Dominic. Unfortunately, he was unwell, he's been hospitalized, so maybe we can kind of send him some positive energy and hope he feels better soon. So unfortunately, we only found out this morning. I'm just going to stand in for him and just welcome you. I haven't got a written speech, which I'm sure he had. So I'm just going to speak from my heart and welcome you all here to Kisumu, which is easy. I hope you'll settle in. Some of you came earlier and haven't had an opportunity to discover not only Kisumu, but some, I think, even went to Kakamega. And for those of you who haven't gone, I'm sure if you speak to them, they'll convince you to go to Kakamega Forest as well. It's our absolute pleasure to invite you to Kisumu. It's the second in the series of our conferences, Just Realizing Just Cities. And it shows our commitment. Kisumu is extremely committed to this. And I think just although it was a last minute, there was a little bit of apprehension about whether we should go ahead with this conference, but I'm sure now that you all are here, you all are glad that we carried on with it. Just to give you a little bit of a background about Kisumu, last night we served Nile perch, and somebody said to me, Nile perch, what about the Nile? I mean, so I'm sure most of you know, but Lake Victoria is the source of the Nile. So the next question that came up, is that the White Nile or the Blue Nile? And I thought, I don't know the answer to that question. So I put that to David Simon, and David Simon said, the White Nile, okay? And he said V for W or V before W. So it's the source of the White Nile. Just for the record, the Blue Nile source is Lake Tana in Ethiopia. So that's a little bit of history. But so we sit on the shores of Lake Victoria. Some of you, I think, had the pleasure of visiting, or if we haven't seen it, on the closing evening, on Wednesday evening, we will be having a dinner right on the shores of Lake Victoria. So for those of you who haven't been, please don't worry. We are going to make sure that all of you at least go to the lake shore. It's the second largest freshwater lake in the world. And although Kenya only has 6% of the lake, it's a shared resource between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We are not so far from Uganda or the Tanzanian border, because that is the resource that we share. I always say, if you look at the map of Africa, you see this big thing where the person's nose is, and that's where we are. You know, the nose on the face of Africa is Lake Victoria, and we're just there. A lot of people think Kisumu, never heard of it, but then when you say Lake Victoria, then of course it makes a lot of sense. So welcome to Kisumu, welcome to Imperial. Hope all of you have settled in well, and if there are any issues, please don't hesitate to give us a shout, and we'll try and see how we can sort you out. So it gives me a pleasure to open this officially. I think somebody else is coming and opening this session officially. But good morning to all of you, and Karibu Kisumu.
Thank you, Madam Munira. Now we'll invite Professor Stephen Agong, the director of the local platform. Please welcome Stephen.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sam. You know, once you have been a mayor, you are always mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I'm extremely delighted, and sometimes you do not know how to hold on to your happiness. But it has been a journey since September 2016, when Kisumu was nominated to host the 2017 Second International Mistra Urban Features International Conference. And indeed, that journey started in Gothenburg, and it has taken a while. It has been a journey indeed, that without you having arrived on time, as early as Friday last week and as late as this morning, it would not have been possible to hold this international conference. So I want also, in tune with Madam Munira, to warmly welcome all of you to this second international conference. The theme for this conference is Just Cities, Learning Through Comparisons. And indeed, what we have seen even from the city choir is an indication that our uniqueness, diversity, are really our strength. It's something that you would not see everywhere. But allow me at this point just to acknowledge a few people who have been behind this great preparation. First and foremost, I would like to request all the KLIP board trustees just to stand so that you see them and acknowledge them. The KLIP trustees who are here, apart from our chair who is indisposed, we can see Madam Munira representing the private sector, Sam Okello, also a trustee representing the public sector, Tom Ogola representing the citizenry. Then we have Lydia Mudhoni from the city. Then we have Madam Betty Okero representing the civil society and also our treasurer. Thank you so much. It would not suffice to indicate that we have strong men and women also supporting this important cause. I want to also acknowledge our Chalmers president and CEO of Chalmers University of Technology, where Mr. Urban Features is domiciled in Gothenburg. And indeed, without his blessing, I'm sure we would be a struggling secretariat. So he will be talking, so I don't want him to stand. His time will come. Thank you so much. Then we have the Mistra, Urban Features chairman of the board, who is here with us, a longtime friend from ICSU days till this moment, and even inter-academic panels. So Thomas, if you could just stand so that... Thank you so much. Allow me also just to request the other board members of Mistra Urban Features who are here, except David, who I would want to acknowledge in a different way. The other board members, please, if you could just stand if you're there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Others would not join us physically, but they would be joining into this conference through Skype, so they are with us in this particular setting. I would also want to appreciate Mistra Foundation representative who is here with us. Kindly stand and wave. Johan, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, it would not be possible. When you hear there's a director of LIP in Kisumu, I cannot work alone. I work with a team, and within this team we have got a very strong secretariat, lean indeed, but very strong. And the secretariat is well represented here. I don't know whether Alfred is in the room, Alfred or Tom. If he's not there, then we'll appreciate him. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got LIP directors who are well represented here. We have got Cape Town, represented here by the LIP director. Cape Town is Warren Smith. Warren? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Warren. And then we have Sheffield and Manchester, represented by Beth Perry. Beth, please. And we have the host of Mistra Urban Features right in Sweden. Margareta, please. Thank you. And we have also Malmö, represented here by Magnus. Both of them. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be in Kisumu. It's wonderful to be in Imperial Hotel. It's wonderful to be in Kenya. And indeed, those who are not quite convinced, be convinced that Kisumu is the place is the destination of choice for an international conference of this magnitude. We started the journey which has brought us this far in 2012. And I want really to appreciate our director, David Simon. You will talk, but David, let them see you. Yeah. At some point, you know, you cannot hold on to secrets forever. At some point, I had to go into a side meeting with David Simon and convince David Simon, and he would convince me that indeed it was still viable to hold this conference this year in Kisumu. My biggest battle was that if we missed this year, then of course we did not have any opportunity, because next year is destined for South Africa, and as you'll see later in the program, South Africa will be taking the flag from Kisumu. And therefore, would have lost even next year. And then 2019, which is the last phase of Mistra Urban Features funding for this phase we are having, it would be held in Manchester. So Kisumu was not going to be in the equation in all this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want really, can we applaud David Simon for having, for having agreed that we would really work together on all this. As I conclude my preliminaries, I want to say that we have worked on several projects, namely ecotourism, which has been well illustrated and demonstrated by our city choir here. That cultural heritage is so strong, and it speaks volume for us as a group or as a team that are geared towards sustainable urban development. Then we also worked largely on marketplaces, but this time around we are focusing on quite important thematic areas which are of technical nature, namely solid waste in Kisumu as our flagship project. Unfortunately, we have quite a number of people who are with us on this in terms of international comparison and collaboration. So this conference to us is a mark of maturity in terms of our international efforts and collaboration. And therefore, we are going to work together to make Kisumu one of the best cities as what I would call millennium cities in this globe. And therefore, your coming here is going to be a blessing indeed to all of us. We are also working on food security, and I'm sure there will be a presentation in this particular area, but this is an area which we also feel quite likely that it is vital for us as not only as a city, but as a continent, that without tackling this, especially with the growing urban population, we cannot handle food security sufficiently. So unless we come together, it will not be possible. Last but not least, we are also dealing with issues of spatial, socio-spatial thematic areas. And I think in a short while during break time, we'd also be seeing some of the products. But our products should strengthen the citizenry. The battle we have in Africa, and in Kisumu for that matter, by extension, is that we want to empower the citizenry. If they are empowered, food is available on the table, they have jobs, they are secure, they can freely move around like we saw yesterday when we went all the way up to the sanctuary, then indeed Africa would be redeemed. And this is not something that we only have to deal with within the context of Kisumu only, but the context of Africa at large. Ladies and gentlemen, I want now to invite, on behalf of the organizers, Stefan Bengtsson, to give his official remarks and also greet you. Can we put our hands for Stefan? And by the way, we share something in common. Both of us are Stefan. Yeah. So it only goes well that I could invite you to be with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And it makes it easy. We have the same name. So you could just use. Does it work? Yeah, it does. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this conference, this Mistra Urban Future Conference, Realizing Just Cities, Learning Through Comparison. Chalmers being the host of the Mistra Urban Future project, of course, it's really my pleasure to welcome you to the conference, welcome you to Kisumu. Okay, for myself, it's the first time I'm in Kisumu, so I'm reached about 24 hours here now. So, but anyway, I'm welcome here, and I'm so happy to see so many of you here taking part in this conference. We know that the theme of the entire project, and in particular of this conference, is of course to discuss what we can learn from comparing different perspectives, what we can learn by comparing different actions taking in different cities. Because the rapidly growing populations of cities all over the world, of course, causes extreme challenges. In one way, you may say it opens opportunities to find resource-efficient ways of living. It opens ways of accommodate growing population and to find sustainable ways of forming that. On the other hand, we know that the challenges are huge and very diverse. And this is what the conference is about. And if I quote from the program, how to find ways to make urbanization a source of wealth, health, and sustainability. It's easy to say, but of course, a very complex issue. And when talking about very complex issues, we realize that we cannot just sit at our desks at university studying and thinking within our own subject. So since the issues are so complex, this requires collaborations in very many different dimensions. We need multi and cross-disciplinary cooperation between different scientific disciplines. We need cooperation between different types of actors, academia, companies, cities, other organizations that take part, NGOs, etc. And we need international cooperation, so we could bring in perspectives and challenges from all around the globe. So what we're trying to do, or what you are trying to do here, is really a very complex thing, because we know going across various types of borders is difficult. We have to leave some thoughts we have when we stay within where we are in our silos. So try to do something which is not very easy, but which is absolutely necessary to take these studies forward. And Mistra Urban Futures is a tool for that. Within the project we have formed, or within the program we have formed collaborations between platforms in different countries, in Sweden, in Kenya, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. And we know there are interests of groups from other regions coming into the project and to contribute to it. And that is, I think, the strength of the Mistra Urban Futures project. So it's research, but it's also innovation, and it's ways of finding paths from research, taking results into utilization in the surrounding society. And there we have different perspectives. We have different experiences on how to do that. And I think that is probably one of the really most important and interesting things that we could share and learn from each other how to do that. Also, of course, the platform work opens up opportunities also to strengthen bilateral relations, and this is also something that is very, very important. As for me, coming from Chalmers, it's very interesting here to be in Kisumu, to meet you, Stephen, and discuss how we could also build besides cooperating within the program, also could see how we can strengthen relations, and that is true, of course, with all actors here. I see that in the program you will share experiences, you will discuss on Tuesday how how the activities here links to the 17 SDGs, the global SDGs. I think that is very important. It could be a way of finding a framework for continued discussion. So from the host of Mistra Urban Futures, of course, I would like to thank for the support from the Mistra Foundation and from other funding agencies and funding bodies for supporting this program. I will say thank you for coming here and taking part of this, and I will end up, we're not there yet, it's one small thing still, and I will conclude my talk by also direct a sincere thank to the local organization. And Stephen, if you come up here again. May seem a little bit strange here in the beginning of the conference, but anyway, I would like to hand over a small gift and sincere thank you from the host of the project for arranging this workshop, and so far what we have seen with an excellent welcome dinner and with this wonderful entertainment this morning. This will just be a really top conference. So thank you, and thank you to all of your colleagues to arranging this, so I brought this little one, and of course there's also a Chalmers bag here, so the visibility of Chalmers in Kisumu will increase. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. A round of applause again for Professor Stevens. It's now my pleasure to welcome Professor David Simons, Director, Mistra Urban Futures, to give us an address. Please, let's welcome him.
Thank you all very much, and thank you to Sam Okello, our moderator today, who, as many visitors will not know, is actually a former mayor of Kisumu and has been instrumental in getting the KLIP Trust up and getting it recognized both locally and beyond the confines of Kisumu City and County, along with Stephen and the other trustees. So we thank you all very much and know how much of a struggle it is at times in the current context, but we do really appreciate your efforts. What I'm going to do with the next few minutes is just to give you, particularly local participants who perhaps have not been part of some of these wider discussions before, a quick overview of the work of Mistra Urban Futures. Now, why is that not working? There we are. We have at the moment several local interaction platforms, as Prof. Agong mentioned earlier on, the Gothenburg platform and Malmö Lund in Sweden. We've just started a small node in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, and then we have a Sheffield Manchester node in the UK, the Cape Town KLIP in South Africa, and of course Kisumu, our hosts this time. And we have core funding from Mistra, the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research, and SIDA, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, along with core funding from the consortium in Gothenburg that was responsible for submitting the original application to Mistra for what became Mistra Urban Futures, and also local co-funding within each of the different platforms in a mixture of financial contributions and, crucially, contributions in kind through the time of many of the people who are in this room and others who are not, as well as use of facilities, vehicles, and other equipment, which makes this work absolutely essential. And the crucial thing in terms of the way we work through co-production, bringing together, as Stefan Bengtsson mentioned a moment ago, the different stakeholder groups within society to work together through processes of co-creation and co-production, as well as bringing academic and the non-academic partners together with all the challenges and all the journeys of discovery, self-discovery, discovery of others, and working out over time in the different projects that actually the challenges and the interests that we share are greater and more important than the things which divide and separate us. But it can take a long time, actually, to work that through in practice on the ground, and that each of the teams in each of the different platforms has to work out for itself the appropriate way of operating and bringing these different partners who have different levels of institutional power, different strengths of individual personalities, and everything in between, together around the table to work for mutual and communal benefit, not just for individual or institutional self-interest. And part of the logic of moving around, as Stephen Agong mentioned, between the different platforms during phase 2 is precisely to ensure that we put faces to names, that we actually meet people that we communicate with by email or Skype or other forms, and crucially that we get to experience something of the local diversity across the platforms, and to understand, as we're doing very profoundly here this week, the challenges that our colleagues and partners face, often in their daily lives, in a way that people in this context who live in Europe may find very challenging and very remote from their own experience of working in a much more physically and infrastructurally and politically stable and secure environment. And it is so easy to underestimate the impact of these levels of uncertainty, of interruption to electricity supply and everything beyond that on the daily operations. And quite often I find myself reflecting late at night trying to integrate different documents, how remarkable it is that we get as much as we do from our colleagues in Kisumu and elsewhere who struggle on a daily basis against these sorts of challenges. And it's so easy to think the opposite. Why are we having delays? Why are there problems? Why can such and such not happen as we planned it yesterday or last week or last month? And it's just so really, really essential to turn that round, and actually only by being here and seeing and feeling and experiencing some of those challenges, even just in passing, to appreciate how remarkable it is that we get as much as we do and of the caliber that we do so much of the time. And therefore, as a small mark of acknowledgement, and I feel slightly self-conscious doing this rather than Stephen, but here I am in the program doing it. The Kisumu platform comprises a different set of institutional arrangements from any of the other local platforms. After a year or two of experimentation, they decided the most appropriate form of institution here to guarantee independence and financial autonomy and transparency was to set up a trust, which brings together, as you heard earlier, representatives of 7 different stakeholder groups, of which the 2 universities are just one, and organized as a trust which is registered locally and in terms of Kenyan legislation and regulations for that, with trustees representing each of those stakeholder groups. The work here is funded exclusively by CEDA, along with the local co-funding in kind of the time of many of the people who are our welcoming and hosting committee here today, and many of the project people who will be working in the different project workshops later in the program. Altogether at present, people in KLIP are working on 12 projects, a mixture of specific local ones and contributions to the international comparative agenda of the center. Our program today, you have the printed programs in front of you, entitled Learning Through Comparison, to highlight the work and the challenges of undertaking comparative work across the different platforms. After a keynote speech from Prof. Caroline Kihato very shortly, we will then get an outline of the core comparative work before this afternoon undertaking site visits to some of the key locations within Kisumu where the different project teams are engaged. And again, this will give us at first hand a flavor, a feel, and in one case also little nasal stimulation of some of the challenges that people here are actually working with. And then tomorrow, the half day of the international conference will be devoted to the remainder of that agenda, and then once the internal part of the program starts, we bring the teams from the different platforms together to start to work face-to-face and to take forward their comparative agendas. So, with that, I'll hand back to our moderator, Sam Okello. And once again, on behalf of the Centre, very welcome to our second international conference.
I think that's not good enough. A good round of applause, please. He's coordinated us all the way from Sweden, London, and we are here all together. So people have come from all over the world. Has he done a great job? Thank you. Thank you very much. Now it's my pleasure to invite His Excellency, the Governor of Kisumu, but because the Governor is not able to come, he's indisposed, actually. He's bereaved, actually, and he sent a very able person who I know is called Nerry, Achar. Nerry Achar, currently we sit in the Environment and Infrastructure Task Force of this city, but he is the incoming cabinet in the professor's government, cabinet for lands, housing, physical planning, and urban development. So befitting to represent the governor in this conference. So it's my pleasure to welcome Nerry Achar to give us his remarks and welcome this conference officially. Welcome, Nerry.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I take this opportunity to give my apologies for arriving slightly late. So I hope you'll accept my apologies. The chairman of Mistra Urban Futures Board, Director, Mistra Urban Futures, the president, Chalmers University of Technology, distinguished delegates from local interaction platforms of Cape Town, South Africa, Gothenburg, Malmö, and Stockholm, Sweden, Sheffield, Manchester, United Kingdom, Kisumu, Kenya, delegates from other cities, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to take this opportunity on behalf of the Governor of the great county of Kisumu, Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o, to officially welcome you to Kisumu City. I am greatly delighted by the fact that Kisumu City is part of the Mistra Urban Futures Consortium. We are privileged to host this second Mistra Urban Futures Conference with the theme, Realizing Just Cities, Learning Through Comparison, which captures the needs and aspirations of a growing city. It comes at a time when Kisumu City is redesigning its vision for the next 20 years. Under the theme, I quote, Kisumu will begin to fly with the eagles and stop walking with the chicken. I am confident that we shall be able to gain some useful insights that could be incorporated in our overall vision of creating wealth and peaceful community at such a time when the whole world is focused on Kenya, its governance challenge, inclusion, vulnerabilities, safety, and security. Issues that continue to affect most cities across Africa and beyond. As delegates, the theme of this conference should remind us on how important the role of cities in ensuring justice for all. Therefore, I believe that the discussions we will have will be weighty as it touches on humanity, fairness, equity, and inclusion. And I look forward to receiving your recommendations on how we as a city and county will be able to find solutions to some of the challenges we are facing. As a county, we intend to institute an effective and functional city management board. This will ensure proper governance structures within the city of Kisumu for efficient service delivery to the residents. We have proposed to set up village council structures that will ensure that citizens have services up to the village level. These public spaces will also then form units for monitoring and providing oversight, which is a key factor necessary in the improvement of governance and accountability. We remain cognizant that resources remain a challenge. Therefore, priorities will continue to guide most of our interventions and implementation of our projects. This conference provides an opportunity to explore various possibilities of confronting urban challenges. Research being the backbone of this platform, I recognize the partnership taking place amongst the key stakeholders of Mistra Urban Futures. That goes a long way in ensuring that cities such as Kisumu realizes the global agenda of sustainable development. We appreciate the research activities that have been going on in Kisumu, supported by Mistra Urban Futures and SIDA. We welcome new ideas and good practices which can be beneficial to us. I'm sure this can be realized through this collaboration. On behalf of the Governor of Kisumu, I would like to welcome you once again to the great county of Kisumu. Take your time to travel across the county to see the great opportunities and potential we have. I therefore officially declare this conference open. Just to add one or two, there is something that caught my attention about this conference. Just city, justice. And for those who are Christians, justice is to the kingdom what oxygen is to life. That you can find in Matthew chapter 6, verse 33, whereby Jesus told us that seek first the kingdom, but significantly adds, and its justice. And you find the great scholars like Aristotle, they talked about just cities. And it's a very difficult challenge to have a just city because the interventions required to sort out some of the challenges are very contradictory. At this point, I would also welcome you to this conference. Thank you very much.